4 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have public comment? Aaron.
Hello, my name is Darren Oddie. I live on 12th Street, also known as Redwood Avenue, directly across the street from the proposed Nottoway Solar Project site. My mother owns 80 acres of the involved land in the land agreement with Mid-American Energy. This farmland has been in our family and under cultivation for over 100 years. I'm speaking to respectfully but firmly ask the Page County Board of Supervisors to reconsider its current path on this project. Mr. Maher, you've stated that as a supervisor, your position isn't based on whether you support or oppose solar energy. It's about protecting public interest. Yet yesterday you filed an objection letter to the IUC. That means you publicly documented to have an opposing opinion. And to me, that's not only inconsistent, but a clear contradiction. You obviously have a conflict of interest going on with your vote. What are the actual true public concerns that you have with this specific solar project? All I've ever heard is a bunch of broad statements from you that have never detailed any specific problems other than your made-up ordinances. You state the county ordinance was adopted after public input, careful deliberations, and consideration of the county's needs. What public input? You never came out and talked to any landowner in the immediate area, including us. We live closer than any individual or family in the entire county, literally 500 feet across the street. Careful deliberations with who? You and a previous supervisor named Jacob Holmes, who is very well known, was also staunchly against solar and wind energy and lost his re-election bid in a true vote of county citizens. Mid-American previously offered the board a guided tour of an existing solar farm facility, and you declined. You weren't even open-minded enough to take time to investigate and explore the opportunity. You didn't even want to consider the possibility of progress. That's pretty telling where you stand. Why is it that you were already staunchly against solar or wind energy, and you don't like big conglomerates, as you like to call Mid-American when you speak to the press? I'd like to know what the county needs, what county needs you considered, because it wasn't the increased tax revenue that would come in. So why are you setting ordinance standards stricter than national norms? I'd like to ask you, Mr. Mayor, and the board, directly, why does the county feel it needs noise and setback ordinances that are more stringent than established national standards? Why? Mr. Mayor, you've said you hold firm to your principles because you're concerned about a solar project going in next to family land, including ours. You want to protect the public interest. Who in the public are you protecting? And from what are you protecting them from, is what I would like to know. Holding a personal grievance against a big conglomerate, once again, as you like to call Mid-American in the press, is not the same as sound public policy. An extreme setback requirement and a noise ordinance stricter than the sound of a library, tighter than any national benchmark calls for, isn't caution. It's an effective veto dressed up as a technical standard. Why should the board have the authority to block landowners from choosing to allow solar development on their own property by implementing such a stringent technical standard? This is also a selective concern about noise. If noise is truly an issue, I'd ask the board to look closer to home. We live directly next to a state prison. We hear the intercom system and inmates daily, every single day. Has the county performed any sound testing on that facility? Has any ordinance ever been proposed to address it? Never heard anyone on the board or anywhere else worried about protecting the public interest with that. I've heard no concern raised from the county or the board about that noise, despite it being a constant presence in our lives. I find it very hard to believe that that noise from this solar project will be anywhere near the noise we hear from the state prison or the highway traffic that goes by on a daily basis. Just next door to H&H Trailers, just next door, H&H Trailers runs a portion of its operation out of the state prison using inmate labor. Their facility connects to the property along 12th Street. Multiple times a day, semi-trucks are loaded and unloaded using a forklift positioned directly on the road, blocking 12th Street. This is a 55-mile-an-hour highway, probably soon to be a 60-mile-an-hour highway. This is a serious ongoing safety hazard, arguably a far greater risk of public safety than anything the solar project could introduce. Never heard anyone on the board worried about protecting public interest with that. We've even had trucks use our driveway, as a turnaround because H&H doesn't have enough adequate space of their own. Has the county considered ordinance addressing any of this? Again, I've heard no concern from the board and no worries about protecting public interest in that. We also live a quarter mile from a former mental health institute, which had a documented history of patient escapes, including one incident where an escapee stole one of our family's vehicles, led police on a chase before being caught in Villisca. There were never any worries about protecting public interest with that. Page County accepted those risks without objection. It seems inconsistent then to now raise alarm over setbacks and a noise profile of a solar farm in this area. I'd also ask, why is there such a huge concern with farmland being taken out of production for this project? The total project area represents a fraction of 1% of Page County's existing agricultural acreage. Farmland is repurposed across the state regularly for any number of purposes, one of which was a state prison sitting right next door to the south of our property. The county was okay with that productive farmland being taken out of production. Why the inconsistency in protecting public interest and such resistance by the board for the solar project? This isn't the board's land, and no one is telling any supervisor what they can or can't do with their own property. And I'd ask the same respect be extended to the landowners. Importantly, this isn't even a permanent conversion of use. Solar facilities are a temporary, passive use of land. MidAmerican doesn't anticipate permanent negative impacts to agricultural production from the project's construction, operation, or maintenance. Impacts are expected to be minimal and temporary. Agricultural and industrial activity adjacent to the site will continue uninterrupted while the project operates and the land can return to full agricultural use following decommissioning, removal of facilities, and restoration. Mr. Mayor, you also state in your recent objection to the IUC, Iowa Utilities Commission, that you've had several public hearings as well as a majority vote to accept this ordinance. Who was involved with that vote? There wasn't a vote by the citizens of the county. Was that just a vote of the board of supervisors, the three of you? Well, I think that's a sham because you can say anything you want to support your conflicted vote if you don't want the solar energy. Landowners involved in this project have invested 6 years of time, effort, and money, and we'd like to see it move forward. We didn't get to vote in your conflicted decision. Instead, it feels as though the board's inflexibility, including reportedly seeking a $100,000 conditional use permit fee that would have made the project unworkable, has left MidAmerican with no reasonable option but to pursue approval through the Iowa Utilities Commission rather than the county, which is perfectly legal under established Iowa codes when projects are regionally justified from an economic, technical, and social standpoint, regardless of how you feel about them. County ordinances that exceed national standards created that outcome, not MidAmerican. Solar project also brings meaningful public benefit, an estimated $50,000 or more additional tax revenue for the county. Rather than welcome that, the county appears prepared to spend taxpayer money on legal costs to continue contesting the project. Again, I ask why? What's the true reason? No one is asking the board to abandon its principles, as you've said. I'm simply asking for true fairness that you talk about. Align the county's noise and setback ordinances with national standards rather than using them as a tool to block a project that affects landowners who have made their own decision about their own land. For these reasons, I respectfully input my vote and ask the Board of Supervisors to amend the county's solar ordinance to match national standards for noise and setbacks so the Nottoway Solar Project can proceed without unnecessary and inconsistent resistance. Thank you for your time.
Are there other comments?
Cindy Van Bussen. First of all, I want to maybe defend the board. During the year 2024, I was here at almost every single meeting. And the board was grappling with a couple of things. They were finishing up the wind settlement, and they were also discussing the solar ordinance. And if I heard it once, I heard it 100 times that the ordinances were written to protect non-participating landowners. Nobody thinks that participating landowners should be represented less. So during the ordinance and the approved ordinance, there are statements written in the ordinance that will address the disagreement between participating and non-participating landowners. And if anybody needs to grab that solar ordinance and look on page 4, you can see what those are. So my question would be to anyone, and to Mid-American, I guess, since they're going to speak today, that our ordinance was approved in December of 2024. It's been 18 months, and maybe they could share with us how many waivers they've gotten from the non-participating landowners in the area, and that would help the rest of us understand how the neighbors out there feel, because that is part of the way that they could show us that they have gone and spoken to the neighbors. So, and the other thing I'd like to say is I'm a resident of Clarinda, the city, and they have ordinances of their own. They have a book of them. And I have to abide by those ordinances. And I would hope that every single council person, even if they were a no vote on a certain ordinance, that they would fight to uphold those ordinances that the council put on their books. So I feel like I want to kind of defend our board and their decisions, and the fact that this has nothing to do with solar. It has nothing to do. It's the loss of local control. That's what this is. So thank you.
Are there any other comments?
Jane Stimson. Last week I talked about a moratorium, asking if the Board of Supervisors would consider a moratorium on several different things. There was kind of a negative comment on it, so I'm just going to repeat myself and just say that Taylor County, Adams, Ringgold, Adair, they are all working on it. And I'm going to give you a meeting that Taylor County is going to have a public meeting on July 23rd. I would really like it if one of you three would go to that and see what they're up to. And they have made it very public friendly by having a meeting at 8:30 a.m., a meeting at 12 p.m., and another meeting at 5 p.m. So I really appreciate that. I also, on the second page, I have links to KMA Land articles about the Adams County discussing the moratorium and the Taylor County discussing the moratorium. I've also included a Facebook page that is very educational, Say No to Data Centers. And it's worth looking at because people from all across the country are giving information about what's going on in their area and what they're doing to try to find out what's going on and protect themselves.
Are you talking about moratoriums on data centers or on solar?
Well, we don't have to have a moratorium because we have a solar ordinance,
Okay.
but
You're talking about data centers.
data center and the
Okay.
battery operated thing and that I talked about last week.
Anyone else? Okay,
I did want to say. I did want to make one comment, that the reason that Jacob Holmes did not win the last election is because he didn't run.
okay, the next, anybody else? Are you coming up, Joe? Okay.
Joe Justison. I'll be out there by the Mid-American Solar Project. I guess I'd like to just say I would like to apologize for how everything turned people against each other on the wind turbines. I was guilty of being part of that, and I would love to see the community not get that far again. Maybe just, Judy, you and I had a great talk this last time, at the country club. I was hoping to catch you guys as well, but were you guys there? You were there. Yeah. I think at this point, it's not really about the solar part. I mean, when it comes to Mr. Gordy Boo, I love the guy. We've waved at each other for years now on the road, and we've talked several times. And I'm all about my neighbor's success. I want to see them succeed if that's possible. What I'm concerned about, and I think what we all should be concerned about, is the local control. I would love to see, if this is something we're going to go forward with, I'd love to see the board take the time to do it in a way that meets the needs of the people. Obviously, it's a public concern, or else there wouldn't be an ordinance or anything established that way. At this point, I mean, we have other things that are coming down the pipeline. Is it data or data?
Whatever, either
Okay.
one, yeah.
These data centers, I'm going to state that. These are becoming an issue nationwide. And I think no matter what side of the aisle you're on, I think we all can agree that we'd rather have a say than no say at all, right? And at some point, if we lose this local government, what do we need supervisors for? I mean, that's really my point, right? Is that fair to say? I think we would all agree that either A, fixing the ordinance to meet the voters' needs, which the voters speak through their votes, right? If this is going to be an issue, we're going to speak based upon our votes. We've seen that flip-flop here in the last 10 years very easily. And to see it go off to some unknown entity that is going to make this decision is completely against what we stand for as far as freedom and liberty within the local government and representation. So, for what it's worth, I would love to see local laws abate, I guess. If I lived in town, I couldn't start a storefront in my porch. There's ordinances that say I can't do that. Does that hurt anybody? No, not really, but can it? Sure, maybe. I don't know. But we have zoning in place for businesses. We have, different things that protect your neighbors from you, right? So just local government. That's what I'm standing for, the freedom to do that. Let's stand on our ordinance and or change it if that's what we're going to do. But that's up to the voters. That's up to the people that you guys represent. And yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on with our county engineer.
JD?
Your turn.
Good afternoon, JD King, Page County Engineer. Lovely summer day in Page County. Have a question, just step outside. And thank God for inspiring man to do air conditioning.
Good point.
Engineer update went out yesterday morning. We're blading out in the districts. We're hauling rock with a couple of trucks, the belly dump and a tandem. Our spray patcher crew is working over in Sleepy Hollow south of Shenandoah. The pipe crew is working on Juniper Avenue and 190th Street as preparation for a project in a couple of years. Last week, the pipe crew was working, cleaning some debris away from the large pipes. So subsequent to all the rain we've had. Yesterday we had one more operation. Today we were running 3 in various locations across the county. Got a couple motor graders in the shop. One from the southwest has emission issues, and the cat technician should be here today. I didn't hear where that really occurred. My superintendent was off today watching his granddaughter over in the neighboring county. We're getting a hydraulic pump rebuilt for motor grader number 2. That was one that was rebuilt recently. Should have warranty on that. We're setting up the sign truck that's in and the new truck tractor and hook it up to that our current belly dump trailer. We have one, the one that's going to pull normally is on order. Make sure it's working. Our Land Pride mower that was down last week is back up with the cylinder, and we're doing some alignment on trucks. Moving over to the engineer side, project on J53, 280th Street has placed rock from the Taylor County line up to Vine Avenue, 2,000 tons per mile. That's the base. Starts at the county line, moving east to west. Tentatively, we're going to start laying cement powder on this rock tomorrow. I'm a bit dubious they don't have the equipment in yet. I suppose they could bring it in tonight, but I expect sometime late Wednesday or Thursday to begin laying powder, cement powder on top of the rock. You can local access project now, but when you got cement powder in front of your residence, don't drive in it. It's hard on your suspension parts. It'll just be a day and they'll incorporate that, and then you can drive on it again. We're working on other projects. Various odd administrative things like QBL or the annex parking lot. Concrete is complete. I believe the sidewalks are all placed. We got backfilling to do up against the edge and sealing of the saw joints. This afternoon there was RPA meeting. Todd and I attended that via Zoom. Just a routine thing. Are there any questions for the engineer's update?
No,
Thank you.
thanks, JD. And I guess I would go back a step and thank everybody who stood up and talked today too. So it takes courage to do that. Okay, let's next go to Angie Dower, treasurer.
Good afternoon. Last week I sent you the semi-annual report showing that we are in balance in my office and with the budget. So just here to ask for approval to publish as is.
Do I hear a motion to approve publication.
Make a motion that we approve the semi-annual report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. Okay. Our next, item is for Chris Folk to stand before us and talk about the jails.
Good afternoon. Give you Page County Jail update. In the non-detention side, we have all the epoxy flooring is in and completed. They're finishing up some hardware details on that side and some wall finishes that were needing to be done. We got sound doors in for the interview rooms and dispatch and the sheriff's office. So those had to be touched up with some drywall, and then they'll be touched up with paint. They're working, pulling data back to the detention area and getting more detention locks installed and then wired up. We do have some epoxy back there. All of booking is completed for epoxy now. So now they're working in the jail portion, and they have one bank of cells and a day room done. It's flaked, but they ran out of flake. So they're waiting for that to come in, and then they'll start back in. They're proceeding today with some grinding and getting the prep work done. So when that comes in, they can just go to town, get that stuff put down and get that finished up. The electricians are working on lighting. They've lit up some of pre-booking, and they're dropping lights in all the day rooms, the dorms, programming, and then the hallways. So they will have that done by the end of this week. And then they're going to call for their electrical inspection above ceiling. Once that happens, then the rest of the drop ceiling can go in. Some of the sprinkler heads can go in, registers can go in. A lot of the finishing starts to take place. And then we'll start doing a punch list. Punch list got moved to August 3rd. The architect and engineers will be in that week, and throughout the week, I think the architects come 3rd and 4th, and the engineers are coming in the 5th and 6th. So we'll do punch list, and then we'll start finishing up some of those items as well. It's starting to really take shape. Plumbers will be in next week to start setting fixtures and faucets and start putting together bathrooms. And then I didn't know if you're going to, Tony, talk about the 911 center, but it did get moved, and he can tell you all about that. So any questions for me?
Winding down.
What's that?
Winding down.
Winding down?
They get the rest of the concrete poured then out to the road? Or
No, so our plan is they will do that in 2 pours. Because we are an active 911 center, we have to give them access. So they'll do half of it one day, they'll do the other half the other day. It's a C4 mix, so they're able to drive on it the next day. So the plan is half and half, so we do not shut down traffic, so we can get dispatchers into the office. So.
What happens with all the yard, all the grassy area that isn't grass? It's weeds or whatever now.
Oh,
some of it.
Like where the job trailers were?
Yeah.
Spray it and keep it mowed. I don't know.
That's up to us, I
that'll be
suppose.
up to you guys.
Okay, okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of acres out there. Yeah. We've already mowed the yard 3 times. It needs another one. Tony and I were just commenting how quick that grass grows that they put in. I don't know what that is, but wow, it even grows when there's no rain. So, yeah, I mean, you'll have to decide what you want to do, if you want to.
I drove around
or what.
I drove around to the back the other day. It looks really nice. It's all cleaned up and nice.
Yep. It's starting to take shape. So.
Yeah. Good deal. generator in, all of that?
Yep, we had fire marshal in and he gave us his blessing for partial, and then, generator got commissioned, 2 days after that. So, and it's up and running, ready to go. So if we lose power, we're ready to,
Very good.
they won't be shut down, so. Okay,
Thanks, Chris.
you bet.
Okay.
Tony Shackelford, Chief Jailer. As Chris stated, last Tuesday, week ago today, shortly after 6 a.m., we took 911 offline, moved it into, the state provided us a DRV or disaster recovery vehicle, transferred all the 911 calls for Page County into that. And for the next 55, 60 hours, we dispatched and answered 911 calls out of that. Approximately 3 p.m. on Thursday afternoon, we went live in the new center. We are still having some administrative phone line issues. I'm trying to work through. Summer and I are working through that, trying to get Windstream to port us the numbers. Apparently, this is a common thing with Windstream. They're not real good about being Johnny on the spot. So at present, the administrative lines are forwarded to a temp line that we have through our voice over IP system down there. But just so that you guys know, and the public, if you try to call, it may just ring and ring. You're more than welcome to call the sheriff's office or just try again. But we are still having some administrative issues. And then there'll just be a few tweaks going forward once the, I know Kristen's waiting to hear from Rico about the copiers. We'll have to get some things reprogrammed once the new copier gets there and a few things like that, but
Sounds
pretty
good.
happy. Yep. It's a lot better than the basement that they were in, so.
Even though they don't have windows.
It's changed. Well, they didn't have windows in the basement either.
I
so,
know,
but,
yeah.
yeah, there'll be a few little bugs to work through, which some changes, which everything new is that way, so.
Okay,
All
sounds
right.
good. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. Were you guys planning to tour today, or do we want to?
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I think just the four of us, yeah.
That's fine. Just scheduling wise, Chris and I just needed to know, so,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Gene?
And the sheriff.
Oh, sorry. I missed you, Charles. Wow. Chalk one up.
Just remember that, Charles. Spoke up for you.
Geez, thanks.
Charles McCollum, the sheriff here in Page County. We're going to give you guys a presentation on something that the Iowa State Sheriffs and Deputies Association is working forwards to. It's helping to reclaim money that's owed to us from room and board and medical bills and stuff like that from inmates. And I've got Sabrina here. She's with the Iowa State Sheriffs and Deputies Association, and she's going to give the presentation on it.
I also work in the civil department at our current Page County. So I haven't met a couple of you, but I am local here. So what we're trying to do is recoup some of the money that inmates, when they come and stay at our location, we currently charge them $50 a day for any time that they're sentenced. So they could be there for a year, but if they're sentenced to 7 days, we only charge them for 7 days. Currently we charge $50 an hour, or $50 a day, I'm sorry. And we just have to try to get that recouped. In the past, there hasn't been a really good way to do this effectively to get it back to the county level. We can take them to court, sue them. The problem is if we do it ourselves, we're considered the county and the court system has first dibs. So everything that we collect from them goes to them first, and then we get any leftovers, whether it be 34 cents or $5. So statewide, we tried to figure out what we could do to help a lot of these counties because we're not the only ones who are missing out on a lot of money. We currently have to pay for all medical and dental bills for the inmates, even though it is their responsibility. So with this new policy, we can lump them all together, the room and board and the medical, and do one payment plan, one way to collect. So what it does is we would outsource our collections to a collection company that specializes in doing this across the state. There's a couple, I gave you guys a contract for one of them that is local to a lot of them that are doing it here in Montgomery County, Mills County, Fremont. They will do it for 40%. So we would retain 60% of all of the money collected. Which is quite a bit more than the $0 that's being collected at this time, or very little. They hold on to them as long as we want them to. So there is no expiration date on these. They will do all of the garnishments. They will do all of the running around, work find. Everything is on their shoulders. Once we turn it over, we do the initial bill when the inmate leaves our facility so that they know what's due. Once that comes due on the 1st of the next month, they have the 5 days grace period, and then it goes to the collections and they handle it from there. They send us a check every month detailing out each and every inmate and who it gets sent to. And we collect it all, and then we file it with the court saying that it's been completed. So it takes it out of our hands and takes it out of the court's hands. They cannot collect any money off of that.
Nice.
Yes, very much so. It's a pretty good solution. We've had questions about whether this would fly with the state auditors. This program actually was tested through the state ombudsman, and they did a study across all of the counties in the state, and this particular program was the only one in the state that passed inspection. So it's been tried and true. It's been through the state auditors. It's been through the jail inspectors, county attorneys. So we are above board at the highest level with this program. So we would respectfully ask that at next week's meeting, if you would be willing to approve a contract to put into the collections. And then also with the new jail and in the new expenses at the new jail, we would like to see if we could get it raised to $80, which is the standard at most of the jails around us, and same size jails. So we will bring that back, and I believe Kristen will have a resolution for that as well.
There's an upfront cost for that to get in this program or no?
No, sir.
Okay.
They collect nothing until they actually collect it. Mhm.
So they take it to the court system, they do all the filings, they do all the garnishments, they do everything. Basically, I don't want to say we're selling them our debt,
Right.
but they're taking that debt and collecting it.
And at any time, if we decide we are not happy, we take everything back at no charge. So we retain the right to have them forever.
This is a good way to do it, because the way it is now with the, can we do that with the tickets?
You know, when we started looking at this, we didn't want to put pressure on the county attorney's office for them to have, you know, actually file suit against everybody and try, you know, this keeps away from having to put extra people on to do this.
It saves the county money and brings some funds in as well.
Yeah. Is the Iowa State Sheriff's Association working on anything? I mean, I like this, but are they working on anything with the tickets that are issued out there so that all the money that you guys issue does not go to the court system, but comes to the county?
They actually are, the Iowa State Sheriffs and Deputies Association has legislative people who go to every single meeting, and that is on their top of their list again and again, year
Again
after
and
year,
again.
trying.
But they're not getting anywhere with it. Of course
yet.
not. Okay. Okay. Well, this is good though.
Yes.
This is really good. Yeah. Yeah. Because we used to talk about doing this with mental health
Yes.
payments too. And it was too much of a burden on the county attorney's offices to have them do anything like this. So this is really good. Yes. So hopefully we're in favor of doing that next week. I'll put it
So
on.
Mills County's doing it right now.
Correct. Mills County.
So what's their
is the pilot.
return? What's their return so far?
When this started, they had quite a few more inmates than we did, but they were averaging about
$7,000 to $8,000 a month.
Of course, I mean, how many did they collect? So they had 100, did 10%, did they collect on 10% or 50% or?
They actually went all the way back to as far back as they could, which was 2019. So it's a little not apples to apples, but we sent everything from 2019 to present day when I last knew of it. And they were garnishing probably about 15 to 20 people. And actually they had quite a few on a payment plan with them without even garnishing. They had about 15 to 20 a month on a recurring basis.
Can we go back to 2019?
That might be.
I mean,
something
that
we
would
could
take a
look
little
at.
research, but yeah.
It would take a lot of research.
Okay.
We were gonna try to start fresh with the new jail or
Oh, okay.
whenever it goes into
Okay.
effect.
We make the jump and move the jails when we want to take this into effect.
Okay.
Unless you guys want to back up to 2019, but
Well, if if it wouldn't be too hard to do it for a couple of years, it might not hurt. But if it's too burdensome, then
We can
Yeah.
definitely look at it. We haven't
Yeah.
looked at that at all to give you a good answer.
any questions? Thank you
I
guys,
think-
appreciate it.
Yeah.
sounds good. Thank you. Sorry, Charles, that I forgot you. How could I? Okay. Okay, Jean, sorry.
Jean Wagner, neighbor to the solar project. First of all, I wanted to thank Judy. We had a misunderstanding. I wasn't at the meeting last Tuesday, and she made a comment, invoked our name, and I was very upset because she was insinuating, at least what I heard in listening to the tape of the meeting, that we were for the project, which we are not, and she apologized for the misunderstanding, and I appreciate that very much.
But I thought I said I didn't say, so yeah.
Well, I listened and you did. And what I'm saying is, that's where I think a lot of the problem is coming from, is we hear something from the board, we hear something from Mid-America, we hear something from neighbors, and we're not getting consistent information. And so from that, listening to the meeting from last Tuesday, I was motivated to go out and meet with my neighbors because I felt everybody was speaking in generalities. I wanted specifics. So I went out, I stopped at 9 families. I talked to 2 others by phone. 3 of them weren't home, except I didn't stop at Peg's because I thought she wasn't home, so I apologize to that because I was trying to get to as many neighbors as I could. So I spoke with 6 families, and I stopped at 9 families, and I spoke with 6 of them, and those 6 were against the project, and 2 others I spoke by phone were also against the project. So 8 of the neighbors are against the project. I spoke to one man, and he said he didn't care either way. And I told people, I called a meeting yesterday at the library. I wanted just the neighbors, and I said, I want to know if you're for it, you're against it, or either way. I just wanted to know because we've been talking, and I haven't talked to my neighbors. So I found it was very helpful to do that, to find out what they were thinking. And I know there were 3 families that are selling, or that or have the option to sell, and another one, Renee's family, they related to one of the sellers. So I know at least there's 4 that are for it, and so that was fine. But a lot of the concerns I was hearing from the neighbors was we don't know what's going on, and so I reminded them we got a booklet that just came. It was dated July 10th. I believe it came that Friday here or yesterday. We got this one that was dated July 10th. That was yesterday then. It came yesterday. And I read it. And in the 3rd paragraph, it says, Mid-America is proud to continue advancing the Nottoway Valley Solar Project, which is part of the 2025 Solar Reliability Project previously approved by the Commission and will help Mid-America address imminent and near-term capacity needs. And I read that and I go, well, did they approve it? So I called this Caden and I said, was it approved? And he said, no, the utilities board was approving of the material they sent to them, that they received it. And I said, that's part of my problem is somebody reads this and they get a different idea of what is true and what isn't. And so I said, that needs to be clarified when material is sent out. So I did want to, since it goes public, I wanted to remind everybody that's in this mile area that if they have a concern about it and want to voice it, or if they are for it, they need to talk to the Iowa Utilities Commission before July 23rd, which is a week from this Thursday, and voice their opinions. Because I feel as though the way Mid-America was talking, and when I listened to last Tuesday, we're saying everybody in the neighborhood's for it. Well, from what I just gathered, that's not true. And Mid-America, I talked to Clifford Burker, and he said that they had come within the last year or so and talked with him personally. Now, I've been on the phone with them, and we had them out a couple of weeks ago, probably 4 or 5 weeks ago now, to see what we were talking about. And that was very helpful. But a lot of the neighbors and the family, and I didn't get his last name, that live in Worrell's house, didn't know anything about the project. So the idea that they're talking to the neighbors, they just bought it in October, but to not know, and it's coming right next door, I feel like we're not communicating with our neighbors. And I know, Gordy and Darren, Gordy was out to our house back in 2024, I think, December, when they were trying to get it through. That was the last time we communicated with them in terms of sit down and tell us why you want it. What are you getting out of it? How is it going to benefit the rest of us? So that's why I was motivated to at least get out and talk to the people. And I feel like maybe more of those type of meetings need to take place. And they did have a meeting at the country club, and that was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But I was very disappointed in the fact they broke us into small groups, and you went and talked to somebody. So we didn't hear what the neighbors thought. We didn't hear who was for it, who was against it. What is your rationale? What are your pros and cons? And I felt that was they had to hold a meeting. They were within a deadline. They had to have it within so many days. They were within 2 days of that deadline. So I think a more open meeting where people can say how they're feeling about it, because the people I talked to were against it, and one didn't care. And I said, that to me, I'd like to hear how you feel, what you wanted, how it's affecting you or not affecting you. So that's part of my concern, is that we need to keep this communication open. Also, when I talked to Caden, I said, I'd like a list of, or at least a map that shows who's within this half mile to sign a waiver, like they talked about. Well, he said, if it goes through Iowa Utilities Board, it won't matter because they won't need the waivers. So that red flags went up all over. To me, they say they're working with the Board of Supervisors and with the neighbors. And yet I feel like there are other things that they say, we don't care. And that's what bothers us. We're not begrudging our neighbors selling their property, but we're saying it shouldn't have a negative effect on the rest of us, and talk to us. Gordy and Darren haven't, I don't know, have you guys gone out and talked to the neighbors? Who have you talked to, Gordy? Who have you been out to talk to? Besides the 24th of December meeting. Okay, and they're against it. Go on. I talked to her yesterday. Okay, but they are not happy with having it right across the road from them. And like I said, part of what my concern is that we need to be better at communicating and understanding pros and cons and the scope of the project. I'm part of my concern, I think, too, is, like I said, we have this in the material that they sent. There's a docket from the Iowa Utilities Commission and different dates. I think you guys maybe have those dates. It was under attachment A from the June 30th, 2026 proposal. And there's a lot of dates in there. But the July 23rd, this intervention deadline, and maybe you could talk about a little more about that. But to me, it's like, if we have an objection, we got to get it in there right away. And that's what we had this meeting last night, to just tell people that they needed to get on getting that taken care of. So that's kind of my concern. And I guess my other, maybe it's a broad concern. I know you were talking about the trailer place, H&H, and we've been working on that. Now that is city ground. We got that established that that's city property. And so city has to deal with that. But my concern that I voiced to Mid-America is we got a problem that's existing right now, and you put a solar project construction in that same neighborhood, you're going to have even more problems. So I talked to the city manager, the city mayor, and I said, I told him about that. And I said, you need to talk with the prison, who's in charge, the warden about that, because that needs to be solved, whether the solar project goes in or not. It's a dangerous situation and it's been allowed to perpetuate. So those are some of my concerns, that we've got issues that are going on that aren't being addressed. And then we add the solar project on top of it.
And
So-
that part of it has nothing to do with us. So,
Right,
yeah.
but what I'm saying is
The prison and
that also, but it's right in the neighborhood where
Right.
all this is going on.
Yeah.
And we don't want anybody
Yeah.
to get hurt or injured because that's going on. So we'll continue to pursue it with the city in terms of seeing if something can be done to modify that. Was there something else? I'm kind of not flustered. Okay, the other thing too, I guess that I've yet to understand or to hear is they keep talking about that it's going to be an economic benefit to Page County. And I guess I'm not clear in my mind, what is the economic benefit? Because they're going to get if I understand it right, a waiver or something for the first couple of years under construction. And it seems like they're always wanting waivers for different things. And I would like to have it be made public. What are the economic benefits in real numbers that we're looking at for the county? And also with the cleanup, if something would happen to the solar panels, we also have a gun range that shoots right towards the solar panels. And just yesterday, we noticed somebody went around the signs and drove onto the gun range. Apparently they can't read or they didn't go by the sign. We're not sure. But our point is, we've got things in the neighborhood that could cause more problem, and we need to be aware of how to mitigate some of those issues. So that's, I think that's about it. And also, I guess the other issue, and maybe she'll address about this, is that, I appreciated the supervisors having an ordinance and having it restrictive, which was very helpful. That was encouraging to us neighbors. But to hear Mid-America say, well, if the Iowa Utilities Board agrees on it, your waivers are unnecessary. It won't matter to us. So that's the part that bothers us, is even safeguards you guys put in will be thrown out the window. And so I want to encourage everybody that is not for the project to let Iowa Utilities Board know their opinions and what their concerns are. So any questions from you guys? Thank you.
Thanks, Gene.
Thank you, Paul. Darren Audi was talking about prison was stuck in there. And I agree with him. It was stuck in there and they do what they want. They're messing up the road. They got the loudspeakers. I can hear them at my house, Darren. I can hear your dad's phone ring at my house on certain mornings. My problem is, and we've talked to Mid-America, and I asked I live on the flat bottom. I have a grade of 0 for a whole drainage ditch. There's going to be 200 acres of uphill land like Darren and Gordy own that are going to drain my direction. And I says, what's going to happen with all this surface drainage that comes my way? And I say, I've heard on other projects, they knock down all the terraces, they ignore all the tile line and level everything, and then start poking posts in the ground right through all the existing tile lines. And I brought this up to them and I can't get an answer from them. They say we've done 10% of the engineering and we won't do any more engineering until we have the okay that is to go. So I will never get an answer before they get an okay to build. And so I'm going to have all this water dumping down off the hills onto my flat ground and flooding me out. And they could take it north to the big ditch, but they aren't going to tell me what they're doing. And Gordy and Audie lands all drains down and it dumps on Richard Wagner's ground where it's flat as a tabletop. It goes across Hunter's and boom, it spreads out over all the flat ground. That's our concern. I agree, they should be able to sell the property, but it affects us also. It doesn't not affect us. It's like the prison affects Darren and Gordy and us. And the shooting range affects us. All these things are stuck in there. A gas line to Clarinda was put down the railroad tracks in 48 and 49. Dad watched it put in. And Dad says it was never put in deep enough because they had an 8-in Ford with a slapped on backhoe and 20 guys with spades to put it in. So it finally, 85, the railroad went out. They finally got an easement in 85 and it was put in 48. And because they got it from the bankrupt railroad, they paid $150 for it from Villisca to Clarinda for the easement. Now I have this railroad that's supposed to come back to me and the gas line shallow. I have a picture with a plastic spoon sticking out of the top of the ground. They surveyed to lower it. And I says, they're coming after me saying I moved dirt off the top of their gas line. I says, fellas, I had to take them back there. It's 3/4 of a mile across my farm to get to it. Would you be so nice? I went over there and I literally dusted off the gas line with my hand and says, that's what I farmed over for the last 10 years. Would you do? They're coming after me, the utility company, saying I moved dirt. Walk across the railroad right away to the neighbor west. Well, I have a farm. It's owned by Rosenberg. And do a survey. It's right on the top of the ridge. And they walked across to 100 foot, got on Rosenberg's ground west of me. And I says, the other thing was right on top of the hole with the gas line. Oh, the gas line will lay on top of the ground on the neighbors. And they said, well, I guess we can't come after you. It was never installed correctly. They lowered it. And then Gene and I made a big fuss with I had nothing over 30 inches in depth. It was all under 30 inches. State law says it has to be 36 inches or it's not legal. We brought that up to utility boards and then they finally had to put in a new gas line. They come to the substation on 196th Street. From a substation on into Clarinda through the county yard, it got moved. This county has pull is still under 30 inches. And Gordy says it's in the ditch north of NSK exposed. Is that right, Gordy? So this gas line, another utility company, they fixed the north end. South end, I think, is low pressure. It's still, I farmed that piece of ground from the gas substation into towards NSK for 40 years. And I cleaned up the railroad right away. And I'll guarantee it's under 30 inches in a lot of them. And it's still existing. I fought with these utility companies, and how long did it take a railroad to deed for me? 30 years. The courthouse burnt down 2 weeks after I asked for a deed. Then we had 2 deeds. Max Sunderman and I had the deed on the same piece of ground, issued by the county. And just 2 years ago, we finally got a correct deed to where we actually own the 2.5 acres of railroad property. So we've had plenty of headaches in our neighborhood. We've had the patients like Mr. Audie talks about, coming to our door, stealing our vehicles. We had the academy kids and having the academy people come to our door. Can we look through your buildings 3 or 4 times a year? We had the prisoner that escaped on a work detail and went to Max Sunderman's old house, got a gun, ended up east of Clarinda. The sheriff's deputy pulled up. He ended up taking the sheriff's deputy car and wounding him and headed east on 2 and ended up dying at somebody's house in Taylor County. Was it ever on the press? It was in the press. I called the sheriff's office and they said, we can't talk about it. I can tell you exactly where he walked. He went through the Hess Avenue, right up over the hill through the low water crossing to Max Sunderman's house. But the sheriff, we called the prison. We can't tell you if we have a man out. We call the prison and the phone just rings. No one ever answers. So, yes, I have a lot of the same gripes Darren does. All these big utilities and prison jails, that just kept expanding. Oh, we're gonna put a few prisoners here. Next thing we go, we got 1,000 plus. We get no say about it. So yes, we have concerns about it. I have concern about all this. That's my main concern, about all the drainage. And they won't tell me what they're doing to control their drainage. Because they're doing away with all the conservation work that's there, and they won't say what the future looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Okay. Kelsey.
Good afternoon. All right, I'll just check in with you guys and run a show here. I thought I would talk about a few things I heard from last week, a few things we've heard in conversations over the last months.
You want to say who you are?
Yeah. Kelsey Ballard, Director of Project Development at MidAmerican. Kind of talk through some big picture things, talk through some project specifics and how we can continue to collaborate and what we've heard. And then I've jotted down notes that I heard along the way, so I'll try and catch those. And then happy to answer any questions you guys have either along the way or after. Sound okay? All right. Well, it's a beautiful sunny day in Page County. So I think you could see in a building in a room like this where the air conditioner and the fans are running, that Page County has large load demand on hot sunny days. Solar is a great solution for that. It's a solution that we have worked through with the Iowa Utilities Commission and our solar reliability project filing. So get more to that in a little bit because there are some distinctions in what we consider our advanced rate making packages, and we name those groups of projects things and individual projects like this one. So I think that it's important to recognize that the state has been part of and continues to be part of regulating certain industries. Utilities, and certainly state regulated utilities like ours, are one of those things. The federal government similarly has things that they regulate. And when we put together local regulation, state regulation, and federal regulation, these are generally project parameters we're trying to work within. So when we talk about big picture, what I heard from you guys last week, what I've heard from some of the folks in the room resonates with me, that we have similar goals. To Jean's point, we may just not be coming at them from the same understanding of utilities, utility regulation, and who MidAmerican is that I have. So I want to start by saying, I am happy to talk with you as long as anyone would like. It will probably bore you to tears about intricacies of utility regulation. It's part of the reason I love what I do, but it is intricate. And so one of the things that made the light bulb go off to me as I listened to your conversation last week, Alaska was brought up, and how they share, the word you used were share revenues from natural resources with the state. MidAmerican has a revenue sharing program where our shareholders' profits are capped, and we return those revenues in the form of revenue sharing to take a long-term decrease to our customers' base rates. It's part of what's helped us keep our rates 45% below the national average. And those rates
are some that Page County citizens are paying. We're proud to provide that service and do it in a cost-effective and reliable manner. But we've got to continue talking about what it means to be Mid-American and what those regulations look like, and then how it applies to this project. So it occurred to me last week that there are some fundamental things about our company, about our regulatory structure, that we maybe all aren't aligned on. So I'm happy to continue having those conversations. If I'm not the right resource, there's certainly folks in the building that I work in that would be able to help us with those conversations. But I think the need for solar is another thing that came up. We went through the solar reliability project. And before that, we went through a resource evaluation study. Those processes are both contested, they're quasi-judicial, in front of the Utilities Commission. And so we have folks from the Office of Consumer Advocate, the Department of the Attorney General's office participating in those. There are other business interests that participate in those. And we look at the cost of different energy sources, the timeline to build those energy sources, the demand of our current customers, how that's growing and changing, and how we bring this all together in a way that cost effectively provides the reliability that our customers, some of who again live right here in Page County, and our regulators are looking for. And so we have these layers of regulation that go into how we make money, what happens with our profits, how we share revenues back with our customers, how our bills actually come to be, and what costs can be within those. And so as we think about solar projects like this one, timeliness is an important part of all of that. It's important from a cost perspective. It's important from a reliability perspective. And so that's why we've continued having conversations with all of you over the last years. I've been in my current role about 2 years, and I remember Page County discussions dating back to before my time. I heard last week some mentions of mills. So I'm going to talk a little bit about similarities and differences between this project and the Mills project. First of all, that project is under construction. So if you're driving that way and want to drive by, happy to share those details so you can see what construction of a 50 megawatt site looks like, because it is what I would consider a sibling project to this one. Started around the same time, same size megawatts, interconnecting onto a 69 kV line like we're doing here. They're very analogous projects. The difference is, you heard at the beginning of me talking about Mills, that one's under construction. That will provide benefits to Mid-American customers by serving solar energy to the grid by the end of this year. Right now, we are working with a timeline that maybe this project will be online by the end of 2028. Same length of conversations, very different timeline, placing that project into service. So I get that a lot of these things are complex topics. So again, I'll say, we want to collaborate, we want to communicate, we want to find where we have shared goals in a way that gets us to a balanced outcome. So one of the things that we've mentioned to a couple of you individually, to the county attorney, over at least these last several months, is the possibility of a development agreement. I want to show you that we've been listening. We continue coming here. We held the voluntary public informational meeting that we committed ourselves to an application because we want to be here and communicate with all of you. We've heard and are listening before tonight and tonight, interest in decommissioning. What's that look like? Interest in road use. What roads can we use and how can we use them? How do we repair them? We've heard interest in drainage. And we've certainly heard that the county wants to continue to have a voice in this project. These are all tenets of development agreements. We can sit down at the table and talk about these things. We can talk about other things, but we can capture an agreement between us and you in that way that continues to give you a voice
where we commit to a decommissioning agreement, where we commit to road use, but those are not things that are on the table right now in front of the Iowa Utilities Commission. And so I would certainly encourage us to continue having this dialogue. That doesn't mean we aren't going to do anything separately there, but this is me continuing to talk to you about collaboration, that I want to do that I want to find an efficient pathway forward for this project. But it is important that we continue to move this project forward for our customers and for our regulators. So with that, I'm going to try and jump onto a few questions I heard throughout the comments today. How many waivers do we have signed? The answer is 0. Waivers signed alone will not get us to a path forward through this ordinance. We've been pretty clear with all of you on that through numerous red lines. There are some ambiguities in the ordinance that would need tightened up for it to be a clear path forward for the project. We also have mentioned to you noise. We've mentioned to you just some typographical and consistency errors in the ordinance. And so waivers or setbacks alone are not a path forward by themselves to this project moving forward under the current ordinance. SRP. So within our regulatory framework, the state of Iowa has encouraged us to invest in the state of Iowa. Makes sense. You have ratepayer dollars in Iowa. You want those invested in Iowa to the maximum extent possible. Part of that process is called advanced rate making. So it's docketed with the Utilities Commission, similar to the project like this. Other utilities have the ability to do all different kinds of dockets. That's just this one. And so we filed with the commission in early 2025 for those advanced rate making principles to build 800 megawatts of solar. That was based on the need for existing customers and their growing demand for energy. The commission prescribed a variety of rate making principles as to how that would be done or could be done for us as a regulated utility. And so that project that we call our Solar Reliability Project, or SRP, was approved by the Iowa Utilities Commission, 800 megawatts. That was approved last year. So that sort of sets up, if you will, that layer of the framework and the approval to build 800 megawatts of solar for our customers. So then projects like this one and like the Mills one have to go in front of the Utilities Commission on a standalone basis. And that's true whether it's our project or a project by a developer. This generating certificate process is something that has to be done for every generating project in the state over 25 megawatts. So let me just say that both of those things must be done at the state level for us as a regulated utility on the rate making side and for all generation facilities on the generating certificate side. And so those processes are distinct and unique, but this project is part of that solar reliability project, just like the Shenandoah Hills Wind Project is part of what we call our Wind Prime Advanced Rate Making Project, or ARP. So the difference between Shenandoah Hills and this project, the way Shenandoah Hills was built and the way most, if not all, wind in Iowa is built, the circuits are under 25 megawatts and don't go in front of the Utilities Commission. So we do not have a generating certificate there, but we must have one here. We still have the advanced rate making pieces. Communication, Jean, again, appreciate that. I hope you all have our contact information. We've been intentional about putting that on our letters, whether they're
mailings required by the commission or otherwise. But I have a team that works with landowners most of their day, every day. They are happy to drive out here. We did a door knocking campaign. I was not on that, but I got report outs from folks who left business cards, in some cases, or voicemails in others. I believe that we've come to the Board of Supervisors after filing the generating certificate. We've held the voluntary informational meeting. I'm here tonight because communication is important. We haven't stopped communicating at any point in this process, I don't think. And I want to continue that. I want to find goals that are similar. I want to find a collaborative way to move forward. I'll reiterate Jean's point on the procedural schedule. So Iowa Utilities Commission, quasi-judicial, this matter was docketed. We've sent the docket information. Absolutely, the public filing system is that for a reason. It's available to anyone and everyone. But the objections deadline has been set by the commission, and then they will work their way through next steps of the process and finalize the timeline. So that procedural schedule is considered, my understanding is considered a draft at this point, but the objections date is set for July 20th. Economic benefit to Page County. I think I followed some of what you were saying about, I believe it was property taxes. But there's a distinct difference between how utility property is taxed in Iowa via a mechanism called replacement tax. It's been around for a while. It applies to our poles, our wires, our pipes, and generation, until the state carved out an exception for wind. So wind is the exception to the rule. It's taxed differently. Solar will be taxed through the replacement tax through the state. My understanding, that's a bit more of a complicated process because you guys already get a check from the state for Mid-American's version of replacement tax for the poles and wires and meters and energy that we have that flows through Page County. So this would be an additional amount on that check. And it's a check that varies. So it's a little bit different than wind, where that check comes separately and where it comes, my understanding, from Mid-American to the county. This is lumped in more with traditional utility property. Nevertheless, it will produce tens of thousands of dollars of additional tax revenues as it generates energy paid to Page County. In addition, we believe there's economic benefits locally due to construction work. For the Mills project, we're using contractors that are local to Iowa and Illinois. They're working on bringing in local labor. We believe it'll be around 100 people that will be working in the area at sort of peak construction phase. There are lots of studies in dockets similar to this one about the economic boost that even temporary construction jobs bring. And then in addition to that, I started off talking about a revenue sharing program, our mechanisms and our success with keeping our rates low for customers. And again, those are customers and businesses right here in Page County. So I absolutely believe that Mid-American provides benefits and continue to increase those benefits to Page County in that way and with this solar project. On the matter of, heard some things said around waivers won't matter to us. Neighbors absolutely matter to us. Whether you're a neighbor to a transmission line, substation, a solar project, we want to be neighbors in these communities because we're here for the long term. We serve load, we generate electricity, we transmit it. We're part of the economic systems in the state and in the county. We want to be part of the neighborhoods as well. So it's not that they won't matter to us, but one of the things about the waivers is it's not specifically defined in the ordinance. Does it need to be recorded or not? Does it need to have additional long-term commitments? Or is it a one-time waiver? Can it be 2 sentences? Can it be handwritten? So for those reasons and others, the waivers haven't been formalized. I talked a little bit about that before, but our conversations with neighbors continue. They'll continue through development and they'll continue through operations. So our neighbors absolutely matter to us. I hope you and all your neighbors have our contact information. I hope my team answers the phone when you call. If not, look me up. But I want us to be good neighbors. I want to talk to our neighbors, and we're not going to agree on everything. We're not going to have the same viewpoint, but we want to have conversations. We want to collaborate because this matters to us. We're here for the long term. 10% engineering and drainage. It's correct that we've only advanced designs what we would call a 10% level, in part because of permitting. Because if we come to a county in Iowa or the Iowa Utilities Commission at 90% design, we're going to be pretty resistant to change. Because a lot of money, a lot of effort, and a lot of time have gone into developing that very specific site plan. So when we come to you at 10% design and engineering, we have some flexibility. We can test some things out. We can look at drainage. So drainage is being looked at. My understanding is the team has had numerous conversations, and this is one of those things our engineering groups are working on. We hadn't planned to specifically look at drainage ahead of time, but we're doing that now. It takes a little time. There's some federal permitting nexus that can come in when you're messing with waterways. So again, there's layers of regulation we're looking at. But reducing negative impacts via a change in water flow is something we've done consistently. Webster County, great success story from everything I've heard. That's a 100 megawatt project. We call it our Holiday Creek project. If you want to tour that one, come on up. It has extensive drain tile systems, very networked drain tile. It's a much flatter part of the state, requires a bit different systems than I believe are down here to move that water. Everything I've heard, the work that we did on those drainage systems has done just what I said before. Negated any potential for a negative impact from a change in the way water flows. What I can't promise to do is divert natural flow of water from point A to point B. There are a lot of laws around that. It's called riparian rights. They're well documented in this state for sure. And so we need to be cognizant of the way water has flown for many years and what we're doing to change that, whether it's onto this property or onto that property. So all of that is underway. Our engineering teams are looking at that. We talked today about talking to some local tile contractors. We've certainly solicited tile maps from the existing landowners. We are very curious what, I believe you said conservation mechanisms exist today, because we want to know that now at 10% design, not at 90%. This is the time where we can work through some of those things that we didn't hear about until more recently. I think those were questions and comments I jotted down. What do you guys have for me?
Would you say most of the energy that we are projected to gain from this, from the solar, it goes on the grid? It doesn't come to the citizens of Page County, correct? It's going on the grid to be sold. So Mid-American is selling that energy to other states, other entities, because it.
I don't agree with that.
Can you?
Yeah. First of all, I'm very far from an engineer and even farther from an electrical expert. So for those of you that are one or both of those things, I apologize. But my understanding is all electrons want to go to the path of least resistance. So when a substation switch is opened to serve a load, the first available electrons will take that path because they want to be used or go to ground. So what electrons go where is not something that's actively traced, right? There's no tracking mechanism on an electron. So then what we talk about is the marketing aspect. And so we are a member of MISO. MISO is a regional system. And within MISO, you have people generating power and you have people with loads they need to serve. We happen to be both. So both of those things go into MISO. We need to serve this much energy and we think we can produce this much energy. And then the electrons do their thing. And then when it comes time to balancing, our customers are allocated the most cost-effective resources first. And then if there were extra, those are sold on the wholesale market within MISO. And that's where we get that revenue sharing mechanism you talked about. So that's a lot of layers of MISO, a lot of layers of regulation. I probably oversimplified a lot of that. But at the end of the day, if I go back to that resource evaluation study we completed in 2024 as with input from multiple stakeholders, including the Utilities Commission and the Office of Consumer Advocate, that process looked at when energy was needed by our existing customers and what resources were available to cost effectively serve that. This project is part of the 800 megawatts by 2028 that was a part of that action plan, that resource evaluation study. So are there times when it's sunny and windy and everyone's got their windows open that Mid-American might be long energy? Yes. But are there times when with the wind and with the solar, Page County is using more energy than those two things are generating? Also, yes. Both are true.
How much money has Mid-American invested in this project since, so apparently this project was talked about several years before we ever put an ordinance.
Yeah, around 2020.
Yeah, unbeknownst to myself and others. And I don't think we talked to Mid-American until we put a moratorium in on solar because we wanted time to look at ordinances. Did not know there was a project already being talked about.
Okay. That
board, I think, was all new, or at least most of it wasn't here when that project was first talked about. So, in doing that, and a lot of this, regardless of what people may think or what they perceive, this is more about the counties being able to set the standards versus the state deciding what's best for Page County. And
what's more about that? What's more about that?
Just talking about this, having us going to IUC or you guys going to IUC and us having objections to that, going to IUC.
Okay.
So it's basically going around the county's ordinance. And it's kind of interesting that everybody was saying about the state, even the mental hospital, the prison, all those things were put in by the state. The state came in, didn't care what anybody thought in this county. We're trying to keep county control and not have IUC decide what's going to happen. And that's kind of the biggest roadblock. In our ordinance, you talk about waivers. Waivers were put in there so the landowners, non-participating landowners, could have some interaction and not be felt like they're run over. And if, I think John was here a couple weeks ago and he said that everybody was in favor of the project. And I was like, that's great. If they're all in favor, they would all sign the waiver for the setbacks. If the setbacks are the problem, then those people can agree to go ahead and move the project forward. And so there's ways in there for Mid-American to get the project facilitated and moved forward. They just have to work with those people in those areas. Now, you brought up a good point about some of the waiver discussion or parts of that in the ordinance may not be specific or detailed enough. We could definitely go back and look at that and change the wording on some of that. And I think I've even said, yeah, there was some typographical errors, there's some wording and some things in that ordinance that probably need to be cleaned up. And we would be more than happy to work on that and get that detailed out. And, we could work with Mid-American on that. I think they've been proven to be a fairly decent partner in some of this and being willing to work on that. So it really is not about being for or against solar. Again, it's about county rule. And, we had a lot of meetings about solar ordinances, and we went through and I read the entire solar ordinance, and I don't remember anybody being here complaining about it or talking about it as a person out there for the project. And they could have come in.
You mean a citizen?
Yeah. Okay. So citizens had an opportunity, and I did have emails that were supportive of the project or supportive of the ordinance, which is who I listened to. And so, I think it is, I'm disappointed in that and when John told me that they were going to go to IUC and he said, hey, I'm just calling you to let you know, we're going to take this route so that you don't have to worry about a big, drawn out thing with your ordinance and things, but we'll go to this IUC and I'm sure IUC will approve it and do whatever. But it's sad that we would have counties try to have ordinances in place. And, I don't know if there's a way to scale your project differently. Is there things that you can do to work, and like some of that some of that setback is from a city standpoint. Now the city could waive that if the mayor of Clarinda would want to waive that and have that project right up to the city limits or wherever that falls. He's more entitled to waive that. Anybody can waive it. The county is not gonna come and say, nope, you can't do that. You can't set a waiver. You can't, that's not the case. It's just the opportunity for citizens to at least have a stake and a say in what's going in around them, and at least try to get some, stipulations. So the Wagners are talking about drainage. They don't want to be run over. I get that. And they shouldn't be. And they should have some protection from their county to say, you know what, we're not going to let some company come in and just bulldoze everything around, and then you guys are just going to be, flooded out down at the bottom.
Let's collaborate on that. Let's work through that.
That's fine. And
a development agreement could certainly solve several of those concerns.
Right. And that's fine. I would love to have a working session to work on things where we see eye and eye, and then, go back and look at our ordinance and say, hey, we're going to give a little bit here. Maybe we give a little bit on sound. Maybe sound's not a big deal. Maybe we can, change that. I know when John Huff had put in a lot of changes to our ordinance or things that he wasn't in agreement with, some of that is height of a panel. Maybe we can give a little bit on that, but I guess the worst thing is for a company to go around a county and say, well, you know what, we're not going to, abide or work with the county ordinance. We're just going to go to the state and get approval anyway. I feel like it's a slippery slope for anything else that might want to come into the county, because they could take that same route and go
for utility infrastructure.
Yeah. So you said wind doesn't fall under that.
The way wind has been designed.
But they could eventually. I mean, there's probably legislation somewhere in
the state has siting authority for utilities, broadly speaking. Yeah.
So, what the fight is just, local control and being able to have a seat at the table and being able to, negotiate on behalf of the citizens of the county, and, and not have the people that, hey, you know what, we like Iowa, we like the ground, the agricultural land, and we like to look out and, not see rows of solar panels or windmills or whatever, but be able to, not feel like at least they're protected as well. So I think that's where I'm coming from as far as a supervisor. I I did a lot of work. We did a year's worth of work on the solar ordinance. And I looked at a lot of solar ordinances across the state. And so a lot of the things that are put into our solar ordinance were just cut and paste or things out of different projects that we thought, hey, this looks really good. Let's do that. That sounds good. Because, doing research and stuff, that's some of the things we wanted to take and put into our ordinance. And, we had public hearings and public readings on it. And there was no, now Mid-American, John did say, yeah, this is pretty stringent. But any company is going to come tell you, hey, you know what, we'd like to have the rules loosened so we can, so.
Well, so Mills County is one of those, and I would call that a very hard to comply with ordinance.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of the time at the table with them. That's not an easy ordinance to build under, but we're doing it. We found a balanced outcome. And I think that is something we've been trying to talk to you guys about, or even the previous board about, is finding a balance. And so, we're at a time where time is of the essence, but we remain willing and committed to sitting down and having those conversations at the table to how you can continue to have a say in the project and how it's developed, in things like decommissioning, road use, drainage. We could talk about other things if you want to.
And you asked a question. You asked Kelsey how much money has been invested in this project.
Yeah, thank you. It's several million. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but part of that money was spent on studies with MISO that are specific to this size and this location of generator. And so when you talk about moving closer to town, more and different properties that are affected, more and different studies that would need to be done. So the money that was invested in that couple $1 million generic number are specific to the site we're looking at. They're specific to the land that has been offered to us by voluntary agreement, and they're specific to that transmission line intersection that happens on that property, whereby we can build a substation on the same property and not have additional needs for infrastructure outside of that.
And I don't want to bring something else into it, but I just want to mention that when we talk about the prison was not just put up here by the state. It was lobbied by the people of the community to have that prison there. It was built with private funds to begin with. So it was not the state that just said, we're going to plunk it there. It was the people of Orinda.
I'm not upset at the prison there. My thing is, Todd, you're stating that everything you're doing is public interest. There's never been any public interest in noise or traffic or anything. Nobody's ever worried about our interest out there before about all that prison scheme. So.
And this is the first I've heard about the noise and the problem.
Yeah.
So, solar project. What is the public input? How's it gonna hurt anybody? It's not gonna steal anybody's vehicles. It's not gonna do anything to hurt anybody. Somebody might not like looking at it. Well, there's a lot of things in this town that I don't like looking at.
Nope.
Right?
I agree.
I'm sure you touch it.
Yep.
Is that a reason not to allow? Does everybody like to have energy? Like to get their cell phones charged? I think so. Let's do it.
Right.
Together. That's all I'm asking. Work together.
Sure.
I think maybe the time has come for our county attorney to maybe get up and speak to this, the process that we were going to get into. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey, and thank you, Todd.
Jim Varley, the Page County Attorney. In accordance with the direction I was given at last week's Board of Supervisors meeting, I've reached out to the law firm of Ehlers and Cooney to discuss the potential of having them give advice to the county and possibly representation before the Iowa Utilities Board concerning the Mid-American application to build a commercial solar facility in Page County. I have information and advice I would like to share with the board, but I believe our conversation would inevitably get into a discussion of strategy on a matter which is or soon will be in litigation. As a result, I believe it is advisable to have this conversation in a closed meeting in accordance with Iowa Code Section 21.5, Sub 1, Sub C. I would suggest that the closed meeting be held at next week's Board of Supervisors meeting on July 21st, 2026. There is some additional information I need to collect before this closed meeting regarding my recommendations, but I believe I can be easily prepared by next Tuesday, and I do not believe that the delay will result in any prejudice to the county regardless of what decision is made. Any questions concerning that?
Okay, next week is the 21st. So
Yes. Did I say something else?
you said 6th, I think.
I
I think.
apologize. July 21st.
Huh? Oh, we did? Well, then I better get a hearing check.
And one thing I would say is the county is not looking to get into a jurisdictional lawsuit type thing. This is not the same as the wind. This is not, I'm not interested in that. I was just wanting us to have a voice at the IUC hearing, and how does that look? How do we represent ourselves? Do we have somebody else represent us? That was the point of reaching out to Ehlers and Cooney, not to build up a tab of more money to defend us or to litigate this in a type of lawsuit situation or something like that.
I
So
think we need to stop right here and turn it over to our county attorney and talk about it next
Right,
week
and
in a closed
I
meeting.
informed the individual I spoke to that we haven't made any decision on this. It's really, we're looking for advice as to what's the wise course to pursue. There are some options we discussed, and like I said, I think that the place for us to discuss that would be in a closed meeting. And like I said, there's a few things I need to gather that I probably won't have until the end of the week. So I think next Tuesday would be an appropriate date. If the county is going to intervene in the Iowa Utilities Commission, we would still have sufficient time if we just made that decision to have retained counsel file something with the commission.
good. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, so we will move on to other things. Thank you, everybody who has spoken today. It's been very enlightening, I think. Our next item for business is resolution number 27, 2026. This is one that is required by the state auditor. They're asking us to do two different, I'm going to lump them together, two different resolutions. One is the Page County Subscription-Based Information Technology Agreements Policy, and it just sets out things with our different audit and what we have to do with GASB 96 and the required right to use subscription assets and corresponding subscription liability. The other one is 2026 is Page County's right to use lease asset policy. So I think both of those are things that we have been asked to do by the state auditor. So I would entertain a motion to approve these resolutions. Would you like to make a motion?
So these are things that we normally do?
These are things
That-
that they're
that
asking us to do. Yeah, yeah, they're things that are required by.
Okay.
Yeah, she brought them last week. And one has to do with GASB, which is an accounting process. And I can't even remember what it stands, well, and both of them are GASB. They're Governmental Accounting Standards Board, the requirements that they ask us to do. And over the years, they've gotten more and more into the GASB things, and it started back when I was still here. So it's just things that we have to do to meet the requirements of the audit.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 27-2026 and resolution 28-2026.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, and our next item is board communication. I'm sure everybody has noticed that the tower is gone from the top of the courthouse. It was a process this last week. The gentlemen from, lots of workers from Campbellsville, Kentucky were here. I talked to a couple of them, as I'm sure some of you guys did too. Anyway, I asked if any of them were here 32 years ago when the clock tower went up, and one guy said he had just started work down there, but he wasn't here at that time. So anyway, all nice guys, and they took that thing down with the crane operator and took it all apart, everything all apart, and put it on trucks and left yesterday to go back to Campbellsville. So that's one board communication. Anything else?
At the RPA meeting.
What?
I had an RPA meeting with
Okay.
JD, so
Okay,
that's all I got for coming up.
okay. Todd, anything?
I'll be gone next Tuesday, the 21st.
Oh, okay. You're gone, okay. Whoops. All right. And I have juvenile detention tomorrow at noon. So Council Bluffs, but I call in and get those, so. Anyway, okay, our next item is, discuss action approving claims.
Make a motion, we approve claims.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next is to approve the meeting minutes from July the 7th.
Motion to approve the minutes as stated.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And our next item?
Oh.
Do what? Oh, and the,
Yep,
I didn't
that's
even
on the
look.
back, yeah.
Okay, and the 10th, right, okay. Right. Okay, and our next item is to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5:47.